Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to talk about simplifying radical expressions. You're going to need your notes, a pen and a pencil, and a calculator, please. So first thing with simplifying radical expressions is we need to know what a radical expression is. So make sure you get this down in your note. A radical expression is a fraction. Okay, and this fraction will contain numbers, variables, terms, and polynomials. In order to simplify them, we need to understand these three very important things. We need to know how to simplify fractions, how to cancel correctly, and how to factor. Now, factoring is going to be like one of the largest parts here, so if you are still struggling, make sure you get some help. Factoring is very, very important. All right, now we're going to talk about how we can simplify correctly. The incorrect way to break down 10 over 12 would be to use addition. If I break down 10 over 12, I could do 7 plus 3 over 9 plus 3. You're like, oh, I'm going to cancel this out. But this is a big fat no. Okay? When things are joined by addition or subtraction, they're not terms. You can't cancel, so you cannot do this. The correct way to cancel a term, which means some sort of multiplication, is to use multiplication. So 10 times what, or excuse me, what times what equals 10? If we want to think about it, 2 times 5. And 12 we can break down and turn it to 2 times 6. So since we're using multiplications, we have terms. 2 and 5 are terms, and 2 and 6 are terms. Now terms I can cancel. I can cancel out my 2's, and I'm left with 5 over 6. That is going to be my final answer. So that's something very important you need to make sure you're following. If it has plus or minus in there, they're not terms. You can't separate them. If it has multiplication in between, then we can separate things. All right, here comes our first example of 4. We need to make sure we get all these examples in our notes, please. So first thing we're going to do here is we're going to simplify this. First thing we have to think about is factoring. Anytime we're going to simplify, we want to factor everything first if it can be factored. Now on our numerator, we can factor this by taking the greatest common factor. So if I look at 40x and 20, I can take out 20. And then I need to write what's left over. So if I take 20 out of both of these, I'm going to get 2x plus 1. Because remember, if they cancel, we still have to put a 1 there. Now I need to do the same thing with my denominator. Also, again, on this one, I'm just going to take out a greatest common factor. So what can I take out of both of these? Well, I can take out a 10. So I'm going to put a 10 out here, and then I'm going to be left with x plus 3. Okay, now this comes into the point after I'm done with my factoring. How do I simplify? How do I cancel things? Now, these are a whole thing. If it's in parentheses, in order to cancel what's in parentheses, they have to be exactly the same. So 2x plus 1 and x plus 3 are not the same. I have to leave those alone. The only thing I can simplify here is my 20 over 10. And I can simplify 20 over 10 becomes what? 2 over 1. You don't have to have the 1 on the bottom, but if you choose, you may. And then I'm just going to rewrite my 2x plus 1. And on the bottom, I'm going to rewrite my x plus 3. Now this has been simplified as far as it can be. So this is my final answer. All right. All right, moving on. Question number deuce. That has to be in your notes, please. First thing, when we break these down, simplifying fractions, we have to see what we can factor. On the top again, we're just going to go with our greatest common factor. That's going to be very common, okay? Greatest common factor and AC are probably the ones you see the most. But we can't forget about grouping and difference of squares. So if I look at this one in particular in my numerator, I can take out a number, which is 2, and I can take out a variable because they both have x's. I can take out an x. then I need to figure out what's left over. So if I take out 2x out of both of these, my 2's cancel. I'm only left with an x. And then I have 8 divided by 2, so I'm going to have a positive 4. And this time my x's cancel. Now my denominator, I just have 12x. I can't do anything with that, so that's going to stay. Now, this is what's really important, you guys. The 2 and the x and the 12 and the x are not part. They're not together. They're separate things. They're being separated by multiplication. So remember, multiplication means that's terms. We can break those apart. So in this case, when we break this one apart, we can take our 2 and our 12 and simplify that. So if my answer, I'm going to start simplifying, 2 over 12 simplifies to 1 over 6. Okay, now I have an x and x on the top and the bottom. Here with this, I can just go ahead and I can cancel those out. Okay, they're the same thing. They can come out on the top and bottom. They're gone. They're the same exact thing on the numerator and the denominator, so they can be canceled. Just like those 2's in that very, very simplifying problem that we did. Then I'm left with x plus 4. Now I can't do anything else, can't cancel anything else in this problem, so this is going to be my final answer. All right, moving right along. Third question, we're going to simplify this. Same thing, factor first. Very, very, very important. If I factor my numerator on this one, I only have 2 terms, so I'm either using greatest common factor or difference of squares. In this case, I'm using greatest common factor. So if I write this one out, I can take out a 2 and I can take out an x. So if I do that, 2x under both of these, I'm left with x plus 5. Now in my denominator I have 3 terms, so 3 terms means I'm going to be using AC method. So I have to take A, B, C, and I'm going to break this down. A times C has to add up to B. So 3 times 5, and I get 15. I need 2 numbers that multiply to get 15, but add to equal 16 to my B. So when I get this, 15, okay, well, what times what equals 15? Well, 1 times 15, well, hey, 1 plus 15 equals 16. So these 2 numbers are going to replace this. Now I'm going to rewrite my problem. So I have 3x squared plus 15x plus 1x plus 5. Once I get here, I'm going to move into my grouping. So my first 2 terms are going to go together, and my second 2 terms. Here I can take out a 3x. So I get 3x, and I'm left with x plus 3. My second group, all I can take out is, x, that should be x plus 5. Pardon me, you guys. My second group, all I can take out is a 1. So I have a positive 1. I'm left with x plus 5. Now remembering, when I rewrite this, very, very important, these 2 are the same. So I have x plus 5, and then my leftovers, 3x plus 1, 3x plus 1. That is now simply factored. That's what's going to be written in my denominator. So I have x plus 5 and 3x plus 1. Now that everything is factored, now I can cancel things that are exactly the same. That's the most important thing, exactly the same. So if I look, I have no numbers out in front of both. I don't have x in front of the bottom, but in parentheses I have x plus 5. They're exactly the same, so they can be canceled. Now I write what's left for my answer, so I have 2 times x on the top, and on the bottom I have 3x plus 1. These aren't exactly the same. what is in parentheses here I don't have in my numerator. So this is going to be my final answer. All right, moving right along. All right, last example for today. Starting on this one, we're going to take our top and our bottom. What kind of factoring can we use? So on the top, this time we have 2. I can't take out a greatest common factor, but I do have a difference of squares. So if I break this apart, remember I have 2, 1 plus, 1 minus. Take the square root of x squared, I get x's. Square root of 49, I get 7. So I have x plus 7, x minus 7 in my numerator. On the bottom, I really have to be thinking, because first I see 3 terms, I'm like, oh, definitely using AC, so that's happening. But if you also look a little bit closer on this one, you guys, we also have a greatest common factor that needs to come out first. If I look at all of these, I can take out a 2. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite this, and I get 2. I'm left with x squared minus 2x minus 35. Now I need to do AC. Now, like I said before, you guys, it's really important. We can't forget about this super annoying little brother or sister. So sometimes I like to write this up in my problem right away. That 2 has to stay as part of my problem. Okay, it can't go away, so I'm going to put it there so I don't forget. Then I'm going to do my A, B, and C. A times C has to add up to B. So I have 1 times negative 35. So I have a negative 35 that has to add up to negative 2. So 2 numbers that multiply to negative 35 but add up to negative 2. When I do that, go through anything that multiplies to 35. Well, negative 7 and 5 do. So a negative 7 and a positive 5, those add up to negative 2, multiply to negative 35. This is going to replace this. So if I rewrite it, I have x squared minus 7x plus 5x minus 35. Then I'm going to go ahead and do my grouping. My first 2 are together, and my last 2 are together. Breaking this down, what can come out of my first one? Well, I can only take out an x. Not a number at all, so I just have x. I'm left with x minus 7. My second group here, I can just take out a 5, and it's going to be a positive 5 because that's positive. Positive 5, and I'm left with x minus 7. Now this is great because these 2 are the same. So I'm going to write those as one of my factors. I have x minus 7. And then what's left over, I have x plus 5. So x plus 5. Now that I have everything factored, that's going to be the really long part, the part that's kind of tedious. You have to be a good factor. Lots of factoring is going to happen. Now we can go ahead and we can cancel only things that are exactly the same. So if it's in parentheses, it has to be exactly the same. So if I look here, I have an x plus 7. On the bottom, I don't have an x plus 7. So that's staying. So my x plus 7 is going to stay there on the top. Now I have an x minus 7 on the top. I also have one on the bottom. Those are going to cancel. Now on the bottom I have a 2. Can't do anything with that. That needs to stay. And I have an x plus 5, and there's not one of those on the top. That needs to stay. Now this is going to be my final answer, because I can't break any of these down. What's in parentheses aren't exactly the same. So once again, you guys, factoring is huge. Being able to cancel correctly is huge. Okay, and simplify numbers when need be. All right, wonderful people, that is all I have for you today. Go out and be fabulous. Bye.